Hi, my name is Christy Couture, and I did a project on the Roman Colosseum, also known as the Flavian Amphitheatre. I chose to recreate a model of the Roman Colosseum, as well as do a bit of informative information about the Colosseum and the uses and how it was built and things like that. The Roman Colosseum was actually 206 by 171 yards. It was built from poured concrete, marble, iron, and travertine. The name of the structure comes from the three Flavian emperors, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, hence the name Flavian Amphitheatre. The alternate name, the Colosseum, comes from the statue of Nero that used to be at the same site. It was referred to as a colossal statue. The arena itself is 94 by 95 yards. Below the arena there was a complex system of corridors, gladiators, and animal cells, and a medical facility, as well as aqueducts for movements of water. The interesting thing about Roman concrete was that it was exclusively used during the Roman imperial times. This particular concrete is most well known for its association in the construction of aqueducts. The concrete was made by alternating volcanic ash. The differing amounts of weathering that were done to the ash changed the features of the ash. The different grades were associated with the amount of weathering, and these different grades were the different mortars used during the imperial age, and the highest quality ash was the intermediate and least altered. Now, the water and sewage system of the Colosseum is an interesting infrastructure because they had over 100 drinking fountains, toilets, disposal of waste products from animals and humans, as well as disposal of blood from the arena, and flooding and draining water for naval battles, as well as providing water for other stage effects. Now, the inner working of the water supply was actually in the original construction. In the Colosseum, there were pipes that were installed, and these pipes were used to carry water throughout the Colosseum. It began with rainwater collection. This occurred in the cavea through ducts. From those ducts, the water was poured into vertical pipes leading to the ground floor. Due to the incline, the water flowed partially towards the arena and partially towards a drainage system surrounding the Colosseum. From there, the Aqua Claudia aqueduct was used to supply water. The Colosseum itself had very many uses throughout its time and throughout its usage in different emperors during the Roman Empire. Some of its uses include wild animal hunts, various trained animal acts, specialty acts featuring dwarves and clownish acts, acrobats, gymnasts, high wire acts and balancing acts, music and dances, wild animal fights, tortures and executions, wrestling, vicious boxing acts, a combination of wrestling, boxing, and martial arts, and gladiatorial combats. The very cool thing that happened was the naval battles. Now, naval battles are rumored to have happened in the Roman Colosseum. It's hard to prove with 100% certainty that the water battles occurred at the Colosseum, but there are plenty of indicators. Naval battles are known as namokai. They were simulated sea battles. These battles originated from Julius Caesar. In 46 AD, he had a permanent lake built specifically for these water battles. In the Colosseum, there are historical remarks and structural clues to suggest that naval battles occurred there. Accounts, such as that from the poet Martial, say that the Flavian Amphitheatre could change from dry land to sea very quickly. Roman historian Suetonius wrote in 80 AD and told of Emperor Domitian employing enough vessels to form 2 complete armadas. There was also an X-ray done of the Colosseum, and it showed that parts of the Colosseum were built with waterproof material. It was Emperor Domitian that extended the Colosseum and added the Hypergeum. Now, the Hypergeum actually ended the use of water battles, supposedly, because the tunnels were converted for purposes other than water. The Hypergeum ran under the Roman Colosseum, and it was a network of rooms, cells, tunnels, and passages that were used for different purposes and different entryways throughout the Colosseum. Another interesting thing that I want to focus on is gladiators. Gladiators came in many varieties. There were heavily protected versus lightly armored. Some of the heavily protected gladiators included Gallus, Samnite, Thracian, Murmillo, Hoplomachus, Secator, Provocator, Cataphractus. Those were the types of heavily protected. Types of lightly armored include Rotarius, Demicuri, Liquarius. There were also female gladiators that were referred to as Amazones or gladiatrices. Now, the name Amazones comes from the Amazons, who were a very fierce tribe of women. There was much skill and education that went into being a gladiator, which most people wouldn't think of. There were gladiator training schools of different styles and types, of course. Some of the most famous were names such as the Ludus Magnus, the Ludus Matutinus, the Ludus Glacius, and the Ludus Decisus. Gladiators used a lot of different weapons during their battles. There is many different lists that occur with the weapons that they would have used or speculation, but some of the most popular weapons that are frequently mentioned is the arcus, which is a bow and sagitta, a contus, which is a pike or lance, a kinakes, which is a single-edged cavalry sword, fascina, which are tridents or harpoons, the gladius, which is a sword, the gladius graecus, which is a leaf-shaped sword, the hasta, which is a spear for throwing, the laculum, which is a casting net, the lancea, which is a short javelin or spear, the parmula, which is a small, light shield, the pilum, which is a long, heavy throwing spear, the plambutai, or martabuli, which is lead-weighted darts, the pomponius, which is another type of sword, the pugnum, which was a small shield used for thrusting, the pugio, which is a dagger, the sagittai, which are the arrows, semisophathe, which are half swords, sica, which was a short sword with a curved edge, spatha, which was a long broadsword, and veritum, which is a short, light throwing spear. The Colosseum itself was very interesting. It had 80 arches on every single level, and there were 3 tiers on which there were arches. There was also a system for shading. There was a system of ropes that attached and created almost an awning that encompassed the audience but didn't cover the actual Colosseum itself. There are some different layers to this Colosseum. So at the top, there were posts that held the velarium of the sails, which shaded the spectators. Then the top 2 tiers were seating for women, plebes, slaves. This was all wooden seating. The vomitrium was the access to numbered seating. The top tier encompasses square windows and bronze shield. Now the lower 2 tiers of seating were for upper class, emperors, vestals, magistrates, senators, patricians, and equestrians. The emperor himself had his own podium on this level. The Travertine marble is featured in the arches and the statues. Now, there are also elephant trunk tusks, and archers that were there for protection of all of the spectators. And then below the lowest level of spectators, there was a side access to the arena. Encompassed in the arena There is trapdoors with lifts. The fighting arena itself had a wood-covered floor, and it was in sand. The different construction materials were lightest at the top and heaviest at the bottom. The arches and tunnels and stairs led to the vomitrio, which is going to the numbered seating. So all of this construction had a very organized and well-planned layout so that levels were accessible by other levels, and it all fed into each other and was stable. Underneath the Colosseum, there is sediment rock, Pleistocene rock, and volcanic rock. This is my model of the Colosseum. What I've done here is I started out with a foam core base that is held together by tape and hot glue. From there, I added 9 individual dowel rods. They hold together the main structure of the Colosseum. Right above the foam core layer, you will notice that there is the main arena to this side and a tunnel system to the other side. The tunnel system is made out of connects covered with felt and attached with hot glue. The arena side is also supported by connects and felt. When you go up, you then have these 3-tier layers with all of the arena seating. The arena seating was made from cardboard layers that has Legos on top of it. All of the Legos were stacked to create seating arrangements. The outside of the Colosseum, you'll notice, has all of the arches. If you were to see all the way around and take the time to count, there are actually 40 arches on each layer, because this is a half model of the Colosseum, so there would be 40 arches opposed to 80. When you go to the very top of the Colosseum, you'll notice that I have the sail system that covered only the seats, but there is a hole right here so that it would allow sunlight on the arena. From the top, you see this hole where you can see down into the Colosseum. This would cover the audience, while this would allow sunlight to go directly onto the level. This was constructed with ropes that are attached to each individual dowel, then connected to a hoop earring in the center, and the panels are made of foam that are hot glued onto each individual piece of string. The other thing about this model is that I have arches on the bottom. Now this is where the aqueducts would have been. There would have been aqueducts running into the bottom level of the Colosseum. They would have filtered up through the levels for the different fountains, toilets, etc. So this is my model. Top, center sections, tunnels, the main arena, aqueducts, and around the perimeter is arches, as well as the decor and shields that were placed on the top and the spikes sticking out. And there it is from the back and from the front.